Okay, so the last time we showed that the straight edge wasn't in fact perfectly straight because we laid it across this piece of glass, and when we turned it one way, we could sneak the feeler gauge under it, and then when we turned it the other way, we couldn't sneak the feeler gauge underneath. It went in under a side instead of in the middle. So we know that the glass is flatter than the feeler gauge. Not the feeler gauge, the straight edge.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, so the problem, the straight edge is great if it's actually straight, because it doesn't bend. One of the problems with glass is it does bend a little bit. So if we put some pressure on here, it will actually bend a tiny little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay this across where there's two bolt holes across from each other. And then we're going to try to check what's in the middle. That's where, right here is the area where we were able to run a razor blade across, and we actually hit this metal. So we can tell that this surface is ever so slightly lower than this surface, because when we ran our razor blade into there, it ran into there. I don't know by how much. The smallest feeler gauge I have
is...
You're all over the place with the video, buddy. Keep the video on the thing. There you go.
So
the smallest feeler gauge I have is
1/2.
1.5
thousand.
I don't have anything smaller. I wish I did, but that's all I got.
That's the smallest one.
So what we're going to try to do is hold this down basically where there's 2 points, like the bolts. And then
we put the feeler gauge in there.
See if this goes under. And it doesn't, which is great.
That is good.
Now if we get in from a corner,
it
still doesn't. That's great. We could try it this way. And it kind of wants to go under there, but it doesn't. That's good.
That's awesome.
So basically we're just going to keep checking from every angle.
See if there's warpage.
The part I'm most concerned about is these thin spots in between. The thin spots are basically under the most amount of stress. They have all the pressure of the engine, but very little to hang on to there. And that's basically where our test showed that we had a problem. Before we tore this engine apart, we were losing compression from one cylinder into the next cylinder. So every cylinder, we put pressure into it, and we got leaking out of the one next to it. So that tells me it's these surfaces in between each piston that's the problem. So I'm just going to keep going through this and
see if there's warpage.
Checking. See there?
It goes right under there.
Well, very tight though. So it's maybe 1,000th at the most. This engine is supposed to be 3,000ths maximum. Yeah, it barely goes under there. But anyway, from the look of this, this block looks like it's in quite good condition. I'm probably going to start with 600 grit sandpaper. Here's our fancy sander that we made with some glass. It's just a sheet of glass. I think I showed you this before. It's just a sheet of glass stuck to a handle. And I'm going to start with 600 grit sandpaper. Yeah, that's what's on there right now. Yeah. I think anything less is going to do more harm than good. It's going to put scratches in the block.
Yeah, so we want
anything higher is just going to polish. It's not going to take out any imperfections like we just saw.
So we want something in the middle?
Yeah, something in the middle. So I think if we go down to 400 grit or lower, we're just going to scratch things up. And
600 should be high enough.
600, yeah, I mean, it's probably not going to do much finishing. It's not going to take off much at all, but I don't think we have a lot that we need to take off. So I think it's a good compromise.